Welcome, my friends, to my corner of the multiverse. This is the Danny Buckler Show. Good evening. I hope you're all well. I've got an absolute corker of a guest coming on tonight, so I'm going to start things off with a quick story. Story time with Buckles just before he arrives. People are piling in to see him. That's good. Picture, if you will, the scene. My first ever time at a magic convention, this was. I was, when was I? I must have been about 16 if I was a day. It was the IBM convention. They used to do it in Eastbourne by the coast. And down I'd gone. Never seen a magic convention before. Didn't know what a magic session was. I was new. You know, I'd read a few books and that, but I was very new. So it was it was that little bit of, you know, when you're on the cusp of it, you know, you don't know, and it's a decisive moment where you're going to go in magic. Those first experiences, they form you. And I was there looking for the real thing, the new sound. I was looking for something wonderful, and I hadn't seen it. Not at the event, let me tell you. The IBM did not do it well. But I'm strolling around. Now, Opus magazine, which I'd never heard of, they had a stand there, and it was beautiful. It was a walk-in stand. It had esoteric artwork on the walls and session tables all set out, and that's where I met the man that I'm bringing you tonight. He was just sat there. He was taking subscriptions for his magazine, and he had cards in his hands. So I immediately thought, oh, a card person, this is brilliant. And he looked cool, you know. And now imagine this. I says to him, can you show me something, mister? In that way that, you know, you do when you're 15. Or spots. Show me something. Do you do tricks? Show me something. And this is what he did. Now, I'm not going to exaggerate this for a story. I swear to God, this is what I perceived to happen. He saw my deck in my hands. So he did this. So I gave him my deck. He took it out the box, put the box on the table. He fans out my deck, runs his finger across the top and asks me to say stop. So I do. I glimpse the card. He squares the deck, hands it back to me, puts his hands in his pockets and just takes a couple of steps back and just stares at me. And I at him for the longest time. I didn't know what he was going to do. And I was like, yeah? He went, what was your card? And I went, the Jack of Diamonds. And he just looked down like this. And I looked down, and it was sat underneath my card box, my deck. I didn't see anything. Nothing happened. Right? It's very hard to get that across now to the sort of internet, because everything is now made to be stared at. Nothing happened. It went from there to there, and it was magic. And it was shivers down the spine magic and all. It wasn't a casual thing. It was a genuine feeling of the Matrix has just been hacked before my very eyes. There was no move. There was nothing. My card went from there to there. Bearing in mind, this is a long time ago. No internet. No DVDs even. That's how far back I'm going. No video cassettes. And card under the box wasn't even a concept to me. I mean, I didn't know that trick was a thing. I didn't know that object under the box was a thing. You know what I mean? That's why it was so incredible. You know, when you see people do it now, they're doing the card under the box, they suddenly get, you know, they're about to do it because they start getting all fidgety. Do you know what I mean? They suddenly get very interested in their glasses and their jackets, and they can't just put a box down now. They suddenly got to move like this to put anything down and reach for their drinks and all that kind of. None of that. Just proper, pure sleight of hand. Never seen it before. Very rarely seen it as powerful as that since. That clear and that clean and that graceful. He's an absolute legend, he truly is. And the second he pops up on my feed, he'll be joining us. If he wants to, he's watching it now. And he should feel free to send a request to join at any point, and we'll have a natter about stuff. So we're just waiting on him now. As in life, so in Instagram, he moves slow. Even now, I can picture his graceful, soft hands reaching out to make the request. In his own time. There it is. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please put your hands together and welcome to the Danny Buckler Show. Power. I'll get the timing on that right. That's my dream, is to do that and have the person just pop up. Evening, Chris.
Hello. Now you can tell them the real story, how you found me drunk in a gutter and dragged me off the streets and brought me round.
I made all that up. Here's the truth. I was walking down Eastbourne Seafront. I heard a change, please, in my ear. Looking around, I dismissed the vagrant. I saw a man with coins in a silk. First, before we start, I'm wearing this T-shirt in honour.
What's the... Oh, yeah.
The Eye Lagamoto of this beauty that you sent me through the post. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I never forget. I remember you mentioning that book a long time ago. And I remember looking for it. And that newspaper that it was wrapped in, I wrapped it in that, I don't know how many years ago, with the express intention of sending it to you. And now worlds have turned, things have passed, and we're in a strange science fiction dystopian world. And I found that as I was clearing out some of my store cupboards, and I thought, the timing, everything is timing. So there you go.
It is. Yeah, well, I can tell you what year it was, because my friend, when we were putting when Bernadette was putting my housemate, she was putting the packaging in the bin, and she said, "This paper's from 2004."
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was 16 years ago.
That's the amount of time I will leave to get the proper effect. There's a lesson there somewhere. I could make up some great sort of thing, but that's kind of my philosophy, such as it is.
It's Max Malini.
Yes.
Sewing the playing card into the prince's jacket in case he meets him in 5 years.
Just wait for the moment.
I reckon there's a playing card loaded in there for a reveal later on.
Obviously, I've taken the precaution of making a prediction or something for the future, you know.
It's a 20-year plan.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask you to choose one of those books in a while. I'll take it down and I'll do something, but not really. I'm not usually up at this time of night, to be honest. I've taken, especially in this sort of lockdown period, I've taken to going to bed earlier, and then I go out very early in the morning when there's nobody around, do a little bit of running and walking, and then, well, I don't run, I shuffle. Not shuffling like Tamariz shuffles, but just shuffling along.
I'm the reverse, mate. I go to bed late. I can't sleep early, and then I'm keeping villain's hours, Chris.
Yeah. I used to be a night owl, and I probably will be again when this is kind of under control. But at the moment, it suits me to sort of stay.
Because you're always, like in the Magic Convention days, you're always the last one to leave the room.
Yeah, yeah. Those days I had a bit more energy, you know. And the Magic Convention environment, for those who don't know, if they're coming in from outside thinking, who is this guy? That's the time. Yeah, I remember being up till 7 o'clock in the morning, or, you know, but well, I don't go to that many conventions anymore, but there will be no conventions for a while yet. But it's been very good that you've kept the legend alive. I thank you, young scribe.
It is a tale to be told, sir. And it deserves to be. You create one of my favourite memories of you. I remember, I've got loads of memories, do you know what I mean? But I remember going to the King's Head in Crouch End with Anthony Owen, God bless him, when we were like teenagers, to see a show that you did with Ian Keeble and Jerry Sadowitz. You remember that? Yes.
I think, was that in the basement of the pub in Crouch End? Yeah, that was on a comedy venue, wasn't it?
It still is. It's a basement comedy club. Is
it still going?
I do it often, yeah.
Really? Yeah.
It's still a comedy. I mean, comedy's not what it was, but this was, you know.
And is it still the same? I can't remember. Was his name Peter?
Peter Graham.
Is he still fantastic?
Yeah, still sat in that glass box behind his sound desk.
I remember that very well, that place. I have fond memories of it, because that was the first time I was sort of playing with actually standing up just behind a microphone rather than doing close up and just sort of improvising and things. But it was good because it made you sort of look out and sort of, you know, the gradual process to be before getting to a live performance, you know, that's a useful art to kind of have, that you can, it develops your presence, I think, because you have to sort of stand out and, you know, project. Well, you'll know only too well. You've got strength to strength. I've watched your progress from afar.
Such as it is, one tries. I I've graduated to performing on phones now. But I just remember that. I remember that show, so because that was the first time I'd ever seen close-up magic done as a cabaret thing.
Yeah.
There was about 90 people in there, I reckon. And it was.
Well,
You did
certainly made me think about what to do, because I mean it's certainly different from when you first start doing things at a magic convention, say, or things in a pub, because I'd started in doing sort of bar magic in pubs, well, just trying to keep the bar open longer, you know, and before I really met any magicians. I had a couple of friends who sort of knew. I had a guy who was, I think he was a sort of bricklayer or something, and he used to be able to do some sort of self-working card tricks. Not that there's any such thing as a self-working card trick, because they all need work, you know. But he was good. And then my gimmick in those days, when I was sort of really obsessed with learning stuff, was to try and keep the bar open, you know. So that entailed kind of getting someone behind the bar, and usually the manager would, you know, I'd be watching the clock, and they just buy drinks and everything. So that's kind of, you know, that's when I was sort of really learning the basis of. I mean, I wasn't even really learning, to be honest. I was the same as everybody, because I was just trying to sort of practice or find my route into things. So I've gone up and down in various areas.
I remember that show. You did Coins Through Silk.
Is this in the pub in Crouch End?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You closed with that.
Yeah.
And but I remember you did Your Card, My Card, Anybody's Card.
Right.
Which is a beautiful routine of yours. I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit later on. And you did a couple of other card things and that, but it was all.
Yeah. I think I had a table. I think I had a table next to me, because you could
you
just
had a table in front,
in front of me or next to me. But it was. That's when I first. Well, actually, you know, I prefer standing up doing things, because as I've found over the years, you can change the picture, you know. And what I mean by changing the picture is you can be sitting down, or you can sit to the side, you can kneel down, all these things you pick up, you know. Just sitting static at the table doesn't give much variation to your performance, and it's more inclusive. So you can even sit with someone in the audience. Or one of the things I used to do was just sit down once I'd sort of started and said, you know, I'm just starting now, so, you know, I'm a bit tired, but and just talk to someone. Said, have you got any material at all? You know, these are just people that have come in the audience, but they kind of get that. And they said, couldn't come up and do a couple of things just while I sort of get up to speed, you know. So it allows you to play, like, you know, comedy is that kind of thing is crucial for comedy, I would imagine. Yeah, that sense of fun, just drawing people in.
That's lovely. Yeah, I remember. That's another. I've got so many memories, but you were the first person I saw draw an audience into a rhythm rather than going to meet them.
Yeah.
If you know what, do you know what I mean? Like a lot of people you see go on stage. If the audience is up, they'll come on like, "Whoa, hey, hi guys, woo, let's do this." Whereas you're like, you come on and rather than meeting them where they're at, you impose your rhythm on them and you bring them in. You know what I mean? It's a different.
Yeah, well, I'm just slow, basically. That's my natural. So it's not an invention, but it's good, and it's useful. But then it becomes just one note. So you've got to sort of add a little bit of variation, and you can do that with your voice, you know, or just the manner, or just the look. And sometimes I used to experiment with what a lot of people use now is any kind of audio visual music or something, or I would just adapt, you know. I remember one show that I was doing, so I could have some music and I timed it. And I did a routine where I sort of flicked out a card very confidently and used that trope of, you know, and this is your card, you know, the false going wrong, and then you can bounce back. And the person in the audience just looks, and then they say, no, that's not my card. And you just look at them. I looked at them, and I had one of the Morricone themes from the gunfight type thing. and I sort of look a little bit more serious, you know, and just stare at the person and says, "What do you mean? It's not your card." That kind of, and it's just a bit of fun, but it's, you know, because people in real life, I don't smile. So they find me intimidating sometimes, and I use that, and I use whatever. But basically, I can be a fun guy, you know.
I remember the penguin.
Ah, the little penguin, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I got that. I mean, that's kind of a straight sort of lift from Ricky Jay, who was the first person I saw using a wind-up toy to find a card. But I mean, that's a funny image. It doesn't have to. You don't have to find the card or do anything. And in fact, what I did with that, I let it walk across the cards, and that's funny in itself. Just staring down at it, you know, and you see it walking, and then it goes off course, and you just glance at the audience and go, and then it doesn't find it. I said, "Is this your card?" And he goes, "No, that's not the card." I put it down, and I just wind it again, and people would anticipate it's going to walk again across the cards. And obviously he's going to find the card because he's a magician. And then when it's wound up tight, I took it and just turned it on its back, so its feet are going, and I took an ashtray that I'd use in my routine anyway, put in a card, and I just smash it down like a jump, and I'd go, and people would go, "Oh," I go, "What's the matter? He's a professional. He knew the risks, you know, and sweep the bits off to the side, and then just laugh it off." So all these little things can just add a variation to your performance, basically. Which, in the end, obviously, as a performer yourself, you'll know is the thing that you end up being more interested in. Really, you know, I started off practicing sleight of hand and doing all sorts of stuff, and eventually the performance became more interesting to me, as well as the technique. You've got to have a lot of tools. You know, I use the thing of a toolbox, you know, having, and that's a story that Stephen King says in one of his books on writing, because he makes the sort of comparison that when his father, who was going to fix a barn door, he loaded up his truck with almost everything that he had, and he went to the place and he fixed the door for the other farmer, and he came back, and Stephen King was really puzzled. He says, "Well, why did you? I mean, it was just a door. You knew what you wanted to do." And his dad just turned to him and said, "Yeah, but the thing is, until I got there, I didn't know. I had an idea, but it could have been anything, and I didn't have to go anywhere because I got all the tools there ready to approach the problem." So the more things you have in your armory, then the better it is for an audience, I suppose, that you can draw on that and experience what you've learned over years. And sometimes you forget and relearn, because you forget what you've done in the beginning sometimes, and then suddenly you're just musing and something will come up and you say, "Oh, I remember that idea that maybe, you know," and so it goes. So you go around in a circle many times on your long journey to enlightenment.
Isn't it long? I remember you seeing.
Yes,
I remember seeing you do that. I remember seeing you took advantage. There was a show at the King's Head, not the King's Head Theatre, that theatre in Highbury, Islington that Lenahan used to do Monday Night Magic in. I always forget what it's called. It's above a pub.
Hen and Chickens.
Hen and Chickens. Thank you.
Yes, that's a really nice little space, actually.
Beautiful. I'm surprised no one's done a magic show there since. It's perfect.
Cool,
in fact,
it's not very far from me. I can see it. It's a light at the moment. It's burning in the distance. It's really atmospheric. It must have had a bad act or something.
It's all kicked off.
It's all kicked off.
But when you do Monday Night Magic, you would perform on the set of the play that was on there that week.
Yeah.
So it was always like a weird set. I remember one night seeing you there, and it was I don't know what the set was, but you had like there was a low light hanging in the centre of the room.
Yeah.
And everyone else was just sort of working around it, and then you went in and saw, right, I'm having that, and you set your table up underneath it. You created a whole performance piece you've never done again, where you were under this bright light, and every time you revealed a card, you were banging the light, and it was swinging.
Yeah. And
Right,
I
and
think,
the shadows are
at
moving
one
around.
point I just actually twisted it and pointed it at someone in the audience and said, "Are you telling me the truth there? Are you
Yeah.
seriously telling me after 20 minutes it's come to this and it's the thing that's wrong?" You know, again, just riffing on that, things going wrong. But, you know, you can always bring it to a resolution. And the other great thing that you have as a magician is that they don't really know what's going to happen. So you're ahead. And if you can get out of it, they think that's part of the. So it's best to have a little bit of leeway. I remember seeing coin in bottle for the first time, right at the beginning of, you know, my checkered history with magic, and it was a great effect. And I thought, but I did it, and the elastic broke. Of course, I only had one elastic band on it, you know, rookie mistake, and it broke. And I remember I'd done some good magic, but people being deflated because it had gone wrong, and I didn't really have the experience to get out. Luckily, it was just an impromptu show in a bar, so I thought, okay. And someone said, "Oh, you should put 2 bands on that." But then I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to do the coin in bottle again because, you know, it's a great effect. And if I was working professionally, which that's the other thing to point out for any other magicians that are watching this, is that I've always been an amateur magician, you know, and I've earned my living doing other things. You know, I've got different strings to my bow, but then that informs what I'm doing. You know, I kind of illustrate, and that's where I get the idea of people creating pictures. So I look at something, which is why Instagram's so interesting. Someone told me that, you know, this used to be a very popular medium, the Instagram medium, for people who are photographers or artists, because I think once you couldn't actually write any words. I'm not sure.
I'm very late to the Instagram
Yeah,
party, so I don't know. I've only been doing it for about a year.
so it was very image driven, but I think you could put your website or branding on it. So people were just literally, it was just looking at pictures. And that's so important, of creating a picture, even if it's just you or how you act. And that all goes towards the storytelling element, which basically drives everything, whether you're a magician, a comedian, an actor. It's this storytelling, you know. So there you go.
Aye. So where did you start developing? You talk about the toolbox. Where did you? Was it Magic Moment where you really started developing that, or was that were you
Well,
doing
Magic
stuff before
Moment.
then? Oh, and what was Magic Moment for people that don't know?
Yeah. Well, actually, to go back to the very beginning, I'm a sort of dropout art student, and I didn't get into my first choice. So I decided I did a foundation course, but I wasn't very malleable for that. And then I started working, and it was nice because my friends were working, but I was getting money. So I just went where people went, and I thought, okay, I'll just go. And I ended up working as a security guard in the British Museum and various other galleries. But I ended up in the British Museum, and it was great. I had great social life. You know, I have friends everywhere, and it was really good. And of course, the British Museum was a very interesting place to work because you could see these great sculptures and other things from civilizations. The British Library was still there. So I had a great time. And when I first went there, I was only allowed in the sort of basement area. You know, we were restricted, like herded in. So you could only, when you were assigned, you only had 2 or 3 places to go to. But it was a gallery with carpet. So I used to practice coin tricks, you know, and if you dropped them, it didn't matter because it just hit a carpet. Nobody, it didn't disturb the visitors. In the end, I was dropping them all over the place. You could tell where I was in the museum. So, you know, can you hear a coin hit the floor? And you go, oh, that will be where Chris is, you know. But that was when I first just got into magic via getting seeing George Cavari at the very beginning in my stint in security places, doing a Christmas show. And he looked like a magician, and I'll never forget his great opening, which was like, he would come out, wax moustache and everything, and he would come out and go, "Good night." And it was like, you know, you just laughed, you know, you liked him, and he did his stuff and he did the things. And then, of course, at the end of his run, he came and collected his money. So we were just around having a Christmas party, I think. And he just sat down waiting. And he got asked the question that all magicians get asked when people know they're a magician. They said, "Oh, could you show us something? Could you do..." And I remember distinctly, he took a cake tin, one of those silver foils, rolled it up, and he just showed it like this, and he dropped it into his hand. And this is why you must remember those first tricks, or any
time I was saying earlier,
or any other people. You know, you meet magicians every so often that do this to you. He dropped the rolled up silver foil into his hand and caught it. It came out at the end, dropped it in, caught, came out in, dropped it in, and then he just went, "It's gone." And literally, the impression I got that it was right in front of me, and you know, I didn't know about misdirection. I didn't know anything, and I thought, the first thing I thought was, it would be really amazing to be able to do something like that. Not how did he do something. I think that must be a rare talent to be able to master something like that. And I remember reading the book Magic just around this time by William Goldman, you know, that was made into a film with Anthony Hopkins. That was a great book, actually. It tells you a lot. And I remember being intrigued because he was saying things like, he was studying like the old star magician under the tutelage of a mentor and another guy, and he's very ill, the older guy, and he's saying, "You do the one-handed shuffle really well. There are only 5 people in the world that can do that. There's the Japanese," he didn't even say names, he just said, "There's the Japanese guy, 2 in South America, and you're one of them." And then, of course, I was thinking, wow, really? Only 5 people in the world? Of course, I was disabused of that later on, but it's the mystique of it. And the key in that book, without any real spoilers, is that part of the problem is he's got, which is the same story for us, is that he had all the technique. He was fantastic, but he couldn't perform. And eventually he has a breakdown and the ventriloquist dummy becomes his foil. So he's disguising his lack of the experience of doing that. And one thing leads to another. Great film, great book, really nice. And Anthony Hopkins did a really good pressure fan. I always remember that. It's really, yeah.
That's weird.
Or,
I was talking about
remembering of it. Yeah.
I was talking about that the other day with a mate, funnily enough. It's weird you should mention that.
Yeah. So anyway, I did a lot of practice for the first 5 years because I think it was because I didn't have the creative outlet of doing drawing. I did a bit, but I was looking for something. And then I just sort of practiced a lot doing technique and thinking, what should it look like? How should it go? What would it? And so it just evolves over time. And eventually it's led, 45 years later or something, 40 years later, I think, that kind of period of time, and an awful lot of meeting other people. I've been lucky to meet some fantastic people along the way, and you form your own. And the one thing I said, I just, the magic moment would bear this out. I don't look like a magician. I got big hands. I'm a big guy, and so I played on that by not doing anything instantly, by just delaying it a little. And then eventually, as you say with the card in the box, when I first met you, card under the box, sorry, it appears that nothing really happens. But of course, I'm just doing the same things that people are doing, slightly different approach, different technique perhaps. And and it's what people think. I'd rather fool the mind than fool, you know, it's quite obvious if you look on television or video that you can see eventually. And if someone does something more than once, then it becomes a pattern, and then you can identify the pattern. So I try to break it up and just, you know, the slower I go, the more effective it is. Or as I say to my audience, you know, just remember, the more you drink, the better this stuff looks. And that's it.
Beautiful stuff.
I've gone on a rambling tale there. I was meant to be telling you. Anyway, I spent a lot of years in the British Museum in dank basements practicing, you know. And I think that's when eventually you came to the British Museum and walked up into what was my old projection room.
I did. It was like going to see Batman.
Yeah. And that was
up that spiral staircase, staircase to see the Jedi Master. It was the most amazing feeling.
And many magicians have come and visited me there, because the one thing about having worked in the British Museum, it was always a great place. You didn't have to tell anybody your address or anything. And after a while, people came and they said, "Oh, there's a guy who's looking for you. He's upstairs." He was asking, and then as soon as he said magic, "Oh, it must be you." So then I sent him down there, and, you know, eventually people found me. I remember one of the highlights, you know, and there are many, of meeting Juan Tamariz in the British Museum, and he came and sought me out, and then I took him upstairs for a cup of coffee, you know, just to have a chat. And the girls that were working in the restaurant, several of them were Spanish, and they're just going about, and then they went, and of course he's a big star in Spain, and they're going, "The guy that was on the television, he's that's him. He's there. What is he doing here? How is it possible?" But in Spanish, of course, because Spanish.
They'll start doing this.
Yeah, that's right. They all started playing the mouth organ as one. It was just the most bizarre sight.
One of my favourite moments ever from that sort of, I remember Bill Kalouche when he came round, and he told us a story about, he was trying to sort of impress us a little bit, I think, and he said, "Did you know that," I think it was either Steve Freeman or Percy Diaconis he was talking about, "can have a card glimpsed in a deck, put it in front of you, and in one motion he's stolen the card."
Yeah.
And we all looked at him like waiting for him to finish. And then somebody just went, "What, like Chris does?" Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're trying to make this big story. Yeah. You know he does that in his sleep, right? You know?
Yeah. One of my younger days, yeah. Well, that's just, you know, if you spend long enough with the cards in your hands, and I take no credit, because everything is, you find inspiration for things in everything. And as I always say to people jokingly, but it's kind of, the ethic is true. So yeah, well, that was in Scott's discovery of witchcraft, obviously. That was so anything, because really, if you dig deep enough, you'll find things that are very similar to what you've done, or approaches. And you'll find an old trick. You know, there was an old adage that, like, if you want to keep something safe, you put it in a magazine. You know, and now obviously the internet is certain, you know, you can search for things, so it's more, but it's true. One of my great possession of mine, I remember buying in the US from a convention 3 volumes of Hugard's Magic Monthly that are bound, and I constantly look through those, and I'm always surprised at what I find, you know. And I'm no real scholar. I just flick through books, and, you know, I've got this, you know, I've got quite a few books, but you can find all sorts of stuff in old books. You can go back and look at it. You just...
Because you were the one that really got me into expert card technique as a book. You know, the Dover one edition of it. Even the one with the Dyke Vernon stuff in the back, the one you can get for any bookshop.
Yeah, well, that goes right back to the beginning of my story, is that I went, after I'd met Kavari and did that, I thought, I must find out. And I was walking around talking to myself like I am now. Because when you're not on screen, I'm doing this to myself. I've got 2 phones and 2 cameras, and I just talk to myself constantly. But I was walking around the streets thinking, Now I must be able to find a book. I wonder if there is a book on card tricks. No, it can't be because it's secret. And I'm walking around the streets of London thinking this, and I just popped into Foyles and I said, I was very apologetic to the person who was behind the counter. I said, excuse me, maybe don't mind me asking. I know before I even get it, this is a stupid question, but just in case. All right, I'm going to ask, do you have any books about magic or, and particularly anything about card tricks? And the guy didn't even look up much. He just went, second floor, sports and pastimes. I went, and I was suspicious, you know. Anyway, I went up and they've got shelves of the stuff, you know. And in there, I lighted on expert card technique and I thought, oh, that's what I should get. And I looked at it and it was like a physics textbook. It was amazing. And I read a couple of things and I thought, this is the book for me. But I thought, but I won't be able to do anything because this looks like a, you know, what you do at the end. So I bought another book. I tried to find something that was simple, and I got Harry Barron's Book of Card Tricks at the same time, and I bought both of those. And on my way home, I was going to meet some school friends that had left school. They're all working, but I was going to meet them up in Archway. And I learned the pass from Harry Barron's book on the way up. And the only thing I could do was I just kept going around saying, look, drop that handkerchief on my hand. Here's the card in the middle. And they dropped the handkerchief. The second the handkerchief touched my hands, it's obviously covered. And I just threw the handkerchief off. I said, look, your card's now at the top. And that was it, ad nauseum. But they were really interested. Okay, how did you do it? How did you do that?
But even that's got a bit of theatre in it, isn't it? The kangi going over and you flicking it off and that being a thing.
Well, I knew that I couldn't just do something plainly because people would see it. And so that was I remember that's the first thing that I ever did. And I just studied it. I had quite a long bus ride, but I saw the photographs that I said, oh, I get it. It's like hinging. And then and I thought, well, people are going to see that. I didn't know about invisible passes or anything. Not there's really, I mean, some people do it so superbly well. It's just like someone's taken one frame out of a photograph. And you think, what was that? You know, but I don't do it like that. You know, I figure that you just wait for the right moment, and I do it slowly, really. And that was the first thing I did. So I got those books, and yes, expert card technique I've been looking at for over 40 years, not in a scholarly kind of way. I haven't gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, but every time I open it, I'm just taken by the language and everything in it, and the tricks. I mean, I learned the pressure fan from that book, and it's very hard. I couldn't get it, you know, because it's not like today where you've got lots of photographs or illustrations, and it's not described fantastically well, but other people learnt it. So it was a bit of a trial and error, but eventually I got it, and so one thing leads to another. But performing was the thing. I thought, well, that's the key, because you can't, you know, do you remember the first time you read a book and it said blah blah blah, blah and then palm the card that's on top of the deck and hand the rest to the spectator, concealing the card while they shuffle the deck or something like that, and you're going, what? How on earth can you do that? That's going to be so obvious. And then you find actually there are all these little lagoons and pools and things that are just, they're like a dead zone to people. And the more you perform and weave a tapestry of, you know, that they don't see these moments.
I love that stuff. It's like editing reality in a way. It's like
moving
between the gaps.
And the way that I eventually went is what I call like that card under the box and those things. And when people think, well, you're not doing magic, I call it the moment that you see. It's the moment of dislocation for that person, because they see something and it's not only physically displaced from you, you know, because they don't see the bit where you actually just slowly move to one side or you're just maneuvering. So by the time they see something, it's a distance, and they go. And I remember using it in, you know, I use it as an analogy in a lecture, because when people don't know about, you know, how you put a card under something, you explain to the people, well, you've got to remember what they think has happened. And I just do it very slowly. They think you've got the card here, the cards are in your hand, and they know, they're convinced that their card is in the middle. So what they think is like, you cut the cards, take the card out, put it on top, think about it for a minute, then you take it off and you put it under the, like this, and then you come back. But all that is like in one of those Star Trek things when, you know, time stops and you've done that. And that's what an audience, if you've done it well, thinks, because they go, what? How is it? And then if you repeat that, and that's the way you get. But for a long time, you know, and this is another revelation you get to later on, is that you think, well, actually, I'm not in control here, because a lot of stuff earlier on is a challenge. And you're going, and that's about control. So like 20 years later, I find out, because I used to thrive on challenge situations. And I thought, well, that just means I'm not in control. Why are they challenging me in the first place? And then I sort of started to get a bit more subtle, like, you know, sort of trying to draw another cloak over the, so everything leads to that. And I told someone who sort of said, oh, it's really nice. And they, because I've put the DVD that me and JJ did many years ago on Gumroad now, which has been very well received.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, but if you, and I said to a couple of people who've messaged me about this, do you do this and what's your thinking on that? And I said, really, you should watch that again. And thank you, very kind on the stuff and everything. But if you watch the audience instead of me, that's the most instructive it can be, because, you know, there's a moment in that when someone comes up from behind, and they were sort of people who worked in the museum at that time, and I do something right in front of him, but his eyes are where I'm directing the attention to. So he's oblivious of the things that are just happening outside his. So it's direction of attention, and you just, and that's kind of on the cuff really, because the moments change. So you've got to be a bit, you know, I mean, I'm instinctive rather than, because the timing is always slightly different.
I've seen you do some supernatural, I don't want to get sort of into methods and stuff, but I've seen you do some supernatural things that are like unbelievably brave.
That is because I have sold my soul to Beelzebub.
No, indeed. Alan Moore brokered the deal.
Yeah.
But I don't want to say too much. I don't want to spoil I don't want to say anything, in fact. I don't want to spoil the experience for people that can watch that, download and see it done for real. That's why. Yeah. But talk about like just the most incredible, powerful things that no one else, you can see them on that recording that no one else is aware of.
Yeah.
That are just phenomenally bold and.
Yeah, well, there has to be some boldness, because,
you know,
like everything, I mean, when you're choosing things, if you're, you know, I tried to sort of, I remember talking to JJ and I said, I think we just need to be in a bit of a live environment to get some real reaction and just make it a bit of fun. And of course, you're treading a tightrope, because sometimes things don't work, you know, but if people don't really know where you're heading for, it doesn't really matter, as long as you can do something. But if you see an opportunity, you know, many's the time that I've been in a bar and everything, and I've riffed on the fact that they've got a big mirror behind the bar, you know, or I've just peeked something and I said, and I told them the card, very simple, but I say, well, the thing was, I wasn't being completely straight for you. I just saw the reflection in your glasses. So if you take that off, And I did the same thing and tell them what their card is. And I'm going, well, this time I'm going to turn away. And everything's set up just to sort of, you're giving them an explanation, something to hang on to. But a lot of this is throwaway type stuff, but you can take it into a more structured performance. If you've got all these little things, then you sort of, you know, the routining of when you do something and the approach that you have, everything gets thrown into the mix. And eventually, if you're going in a right direction, you're you know, you just use everything that you possibly can. I remember one of the great compliments someone said to me. He says, it's funny because I didn't have cards at one point, and this was at a magic convention in Italy, and they gave me a pack of cards, and at the end they said, I think it was JJ actually got me the cards, and he says, the irony is that's a marked pack of cards, but Chris doesn't know what to do with the marked deck of cards because he doesn't need to do that. And don't get me wrong, there's some amazing miracles you can do. But actually, you know, he wrote an introduction for me for another lecture notes I did, and it said, all cull and top change. So really, my repertoire of sleights are quite basic and bold. And but occasionally I'll throw in a subtlety or I'll do something. Yeah, a magician will take advantage of any situation and also wait until the moment is right to do something. When you go back and if you look on page 67 of that book that I sent you and written on the very edge, it's the very first question you asked me. But you can check that later.
I'll have a look at that for a surprise reveal.
There is no page 67.
Because you've got one of the best quotes. I mean, I'm sure modesty forbids that you, but that Di Vernon quote about you always stuck in my head. I don't know if you want to share that.
Yes.
What Vernon said about you.
Yeah. Well, it is very good, but he was nice to a lot of people.
I know all that, but it's still, I've never heard him say that about anyone else.
But he said that he watched me lecture and everything, and I was with JJ, and I think I've got it. I was Billy McComb and Di Vernon, really nice guy, and he said, he actually said to me, people who do things as well as you, so it's in the present tense, were Daly and Mellini, you know, and I found that, I mean, who wouldn't be flattered by that being, you know, and that was, you know, because I remember getting expert card technique the first time and reading the chapter at the back by Vernon and Jacob Daly, and then eventually meeting the man himself was a great honor, and that he was interested, and he was very, you know, very inquiring, and he would tell you what he was doing. And, you know, I said the greatest compliment, I didn't say this to his face, but the greatest compliment is actually he'd stayed awake for what I was doing, because you get older, sometimes you can just, I mean, you've been there, Danny, you know, you just sort of, it's a little bit hot, you'll just drop off and lose attention sometimes.
It's happening now, mate, but continue. Yeah. No, I'm joking.
I only have another 6 hours of material to go, don't worry.
No, I'm loving this. I think people are as well. I should have mentioned it at the start. If I haven't got any questions, I won't fire them up and I'll keep an eye on.
Is there anybody still out there? I think we're just talking to ourselves.
No one's gone anywhere. People are riveted.
Oh, right.
If people do have questions they want to ask, fire them up and I'll go back and scan through and I'll find them in a minute. Don't think you've got to be passive in this. But don't feel like being pissed. I'm going to look at the end. I can't look at it now because it distracts me.
I'm seeing a lot of stuff, but I've managed to get my Instagram onto my iPad. So this is actually a big screen I'm looking at rather than my titchy phone, which I'm really ashamed of, because it's like, that's my phone. It's like, can you imagine I'm doing subtle text messages, but my thumb covers near the whole bottom of, so when I'm trying to type something, so I thought I've got to get a bigger phone. And I thought, I found the Instagram thing and I put it on the iPad. So actually, this is almost as big as my computer screen.
Someone's asking about where they can get your lecture notes from.
Lecture notes. Yeah, so
you've just republished them, haven't you, or put them out again?
I'm going to, I mean, this is very apt in a way, and it's very good because due to your and Ben's good services and another guy, Tim Brand, and other people that have said it's very easy to download your stuff, what you've got, onto Gumroad, which I think is the way that I'll go. And my notes and everything, you know, when I look at them now, I mean, they're great at the time, and people have learned things from them, exactly, because they're not quite easy, you know, but people have learned. But now I look at it and I'm thinking, I can write much better now, and I can illustrate much better now, and sometimes some photographs will clear certain things up. So I'm thinking of redoing that stuff, and I'll just put them on Gumroad or a digital platform, because everybody these days, the technology is amazing for downloading PDFs and stuff. But that's always what stopped me from writing a book, although I've compiled notes and bits and pieces, is I always thought, well, you write a book and that's it, you know, you've got to have something to say. And I don't want it to just be a series of techniques and maneuvers or a trick. I don't really, well, if you see me work, you know I don't do that. But the anecdotal evidence, you can learn things, the people I've talked to and seen, and stories actually represent what people kind of inform to you. There's a sort of cross-pollination. You know, I know musicians and artists, and you can learn things, because at a certain level, things cross over. Ideas and things that you can adjust. I mean, I have a very good friend in America called Joey Barron, and Joey is like one of the best avant-garde jazz drummers in the world, you know. And he came to the British Museum to find me to see if he could get hold of the Coins Through Silk routine. And he's a really very nice guy. And I've talked to him occasionally, and we correspond, and I've talked to him, and he asked me, and this just sprang into my mind, he asked me, what do you think of X, a magician that he'd met in New York? And I said, yeah, I know him, and he's done stuff here and everything. And I just suddenly thought, but you teach students to drum and everything, you know, because that's the world we live in. You have to do something to make a living. I was saying, yeah. So if he came to you, what kind of a drummer would he be? And he went, oh, right, that's interesting. Because he hadn't thought to look at it from his point of view. And one of the exercises that he did that I found fascinating was when he, you know, and he taught in some of the best music. He's in drummers world and stuff. He's like a really good drummer. And well, he's gone beyond. He's a percussionist. He's an artist, basically. Now he is an artist, but you need other people to say that. That's the other thing. It's like, you can't actually take it upon yourself to say, I'm an artist, I don't think.
I think as soon as you say something about yourself, you're not it.
It presumes, and I know there's a lot of arguments, and really, it's history will be the judge of whether you've reached that level. But anyway, back to Joey's lesson. The first lesson he has with the students is he lines them up, and he says, "I'm going to do this thing right. I want each of you to follow exactly what I've done. Okay? There's no rules. There's only one rule, but this is it." So he lines them up. This is probably like something you'd see in that film Whiplash. You know?
I was just thinking that right now. Does he throw a chair at them? Like?
But he's a really nice guy, and he's smiling all the time, so he's not a martinet. He goes, and he speaks like, so the thing I want you to do is, it's a bit like Jim Cellini, you know, who we'll make it on to. Let me tell you.
Let me tell you this guy over here. Jesus Christ.
So he says, all I want you to do is each of you go along on a line. So you start and you clap, and then you follow the next, but you can only follow when the sound stops. So he goes like that. So someone claps and he does it, and he says, no, start again. Listen, when the sound stops. And it's actually a long time before that sound. And that's just to get the thing. You've got to listen. And that's kind of, you've got to listen to certain things, and then you'll decide what's for you or what's not. everybody has their own sort of style. But I always remember, because it conjures up a picture, but I never really thought about it. And if you see the Coen brothers film, Bart and Fink, they have a thing with sound the same, where they ring the bell and it just continues on until a person comes out from behind the sort of concierge and puts his finger on the top to stop it. And you suddenly realise it's been going on at a very low level for a long while. And the purpose of that story, I don't know, because I've forgotten exactly what I was telling it. But it's a good story.
Thanks for the charm, the parable of the drummer in New York.
Yes. So
this is gonna chuck us off in about 2 minutes, Chris.
yes.
Are you happy to keep going? Have you got stuff on?
Yeah, no, I'll go on for a little while if there's anybody still out there. No,
okay, what I'll do then?
Yes.
I'm sure there is. But, we'll keep. I'll cut it off now, so it doesn't cut. So we know it's going to cut off, and we'll come straight back.
And when people
for more fascinating tales that sort of peter out into senility.
Let's see if anybody asks any questions, and then we'll sort of go with that.
So get your questions ready now. We'll have a bit of Q&A after this. I'm going to jump off, come straight back on. So if you're watching this, come back, and then we're going to do a bit of Q&A, and then that'll be lovely. Yeah. See you all in about 20 seconds.
Oh, look, a floating thumb.
I know, right?
Well, it's vanished now. It's back again.